Welcome back. You're watching our special series GST at 1, and with me now B. Thiagarajan, the Joint Managing Director of Air Conditioning and Refrigeration Major, Blue Star Limited. Thank you very much, Mr. Thiagarajan, for joining us here today. Let me begin by asking you about, the overall tax incidence, indirect tax incidence on your company, and what has panned out a year down the line. Is it up or is it down? Or is it the same?
Thank you for speaking to me. It's a laudable initiative for you and your channel to take stock of how the GST rollout had been and how it has benefited the industry and what more can be done. As far as Blue Star is concerned, there are two different lines of businesses. One is to do with the projects and service, where the incidence of taxation had come down, which is passed on to the consumers. In case of room air conditioners, it is a neutral effect, so it had not impacted us in any manner at all. On the whole, the other avenues such as certain logistics savings, the supply chain related initiatives, those things have indeed benefited us, and I think it was a very big transformation agenda of the union government. I would also say it was executed well. Given the complexities, I do not think that it would have gone on better than what it was. There were some hiccups, but those are all behind us, and it is supposed to be there. Even the e-way bill rollout has happened well. So, on the whole, we are very happy with the GST implementation so far. But I have a big need. We are taxed at 28% in air conditioning. I am of the opinion it should be reduced to 18%, if not for all the products, at least the high energy efficient products. This has been our plea with the government, that 5-star or an inverter air conditioner which consume very little electricity, in order that that product become affordable for the people, we should go ahead and do. Or alternatively, certain consumer segments like educational institutions or the hospitals, when they buy, at least the GST rate for air conditioning should be lower. This I am arguing for the simple reason. Coffee shop is air conditioned, cinema theatre is air conditioned, a beauty parlor is air conditioned, but unfortunately schools or hospital, the penetration is poor. So, to sum up, GST implementation was a great effort, executed well. There were minor hiccups, those are all behind us, and we had anticipated those hiccups, and we have benefited from GST. Where it is due to the consumers, we have passed on the benefits. And finally, I think when the next step of rationalization of taxation structure is taken up, I am sure the government will consider reducing the burden of GST to at least 18% level, if not for all the categories, for educational institutions, healthcare institutions, such select sectors which should be deserving this kind of benefit for penetration increase.
Mr. Thiagarajan, since you speak about a differential treatment, at least on a sectoral basis, how fair is it to expect such a treatment? Because the premise of the GST was that it would reduce and do away with, as much as is possible, discretionary behavior. So when you raise this demand, are you raising it from a point of view of equity, or can I say that, are you going back to a pre-GST discretion-based era?
Excellent question. I have a vested interest to grow the industry on one side. On the other hand, it pains us as leaders of air conditioning that the penetration of air conditioning systems in schools, educational institutions is very poor, or healthcare is very poor. how you can accept a situation where beauty parlors, cinema theatre and coffee shops can be air conditioned, but schools cannot be, because the temperature conditions are becoming harsh, isn't it? That it is a productivity improvement. It will improve the climate conditions or the environment for the students to study well or the patients to get treated. Now, indeed, you are right. We should not complicate it by putting in certain conditions. Therefore, look at this. Any air conditioner you buy can be 28% other than those which are 5-star or inverter air conditioner. It can be a subcategory. Or go ahead and make everything 18%, but you say if it is going to be 3-star or 2-star which are consuming more energy, I will have additional cess. At least in this particular measure, you are doing away with the 28% slab itself, which I think logically should happen. And we can demonstrate it will be a cash neutral proposition for the government. And with the Hutchison codes and the GST tracking, it will be very easy to administer. Nobody can run away without paying the tax which is due.
I take your point about that, and I also definitely agree with the fact that perhaps the 28% slab was an excessive slab to start with itself when it comes to the taxation architecture. 28%. We have heard from many other industry players, we have heard from industry experts who believe that it was excessive given our economy. I'm therefore going to ask you a third question, a broader question about your overall sense about what GST has meant for your entire supply chain, Mr. Thiagarajan. One of the things that we have heard is that GST has enabled the big firms to become bigger, and it has impacted negatively the smaller firms who have become less competitive, and their margins have been squeezed. From the sector that you operate in, and I'm sure you also have a sort of ecosystem behind you, what is your own assessment on that specific question?
I have a feedback or the assessment that MSMEs and the small players have gone through hardship or continuing to go through some kind of hardship in terms of the procedural compliance, refunds, etc. I do not think, I have not come across they being penalized or burdened with anything else. It is the question of the working capital related burden or compliance related issues, so they are finding it difficult. Now, as far as the supply chain is concerned, we do have gone through one particular phase of trying to rationalize the warehousing. First of all, transportation time, because there are no checkposts, it have dramatically improved. That's a welcome move. The second is that in terms of self-compliance and online, there is a clear transparency. And we went ahead and rationalized the warehousing architecture in terms of hubs and spokes. We reduced them, and we thought that we are saving some money. But you may be aware, there is a new accounting standard which is AS 115 got implemented with effect from 1st of April, where you need to get the acknowledgement of the receipt of goods. Okay. Now, if I have done away with, let us say for example, I have closed down a warehouse in Nagpur and I am directly dispatching it from a factory from Himachal or a mother warehouse, in GST it was very easily possible that I can directly dispatch it. Now, in order to meet this requirement of, I should have received the material acknowledgement. In the earlier case, I would have dispatched it, the LR is available, therefore I will recognize the revenue. In this particular case, I have to have the acknowledgement that the material is received. Therefore, even within the particular state or across the states, more warehouses may have to be opened in consumer products or consumer durables. So the question is that I find individual departments or the ministries will come out with different rules. This particular problem is not going to go away. We need to work with the government and see that how it can. Like for example, I will have one, some other context I am telling you. There will be a Bureau of Energy Efficiency which will bring in regulations on energy labeling. There will be Ministry of Environment which will bring in regulations on the refrigerants. There will be Pollution Control Department in the same ministry will be announcing e-wastage rules. Now, you cope with different agencies bringing in different regulations, so you move from one to the other to the other. So therefore, imagine the plight of MSME or a small player. The whole question, he has to change the accounting standard to AS 115. Like this, it will go on, right? You are coping with many regulations as a going country. Whether there is a breathing space, whether there is some kind of settling down period. Jovially, in your own channel, I had mentioned some point of a time. Like GST transition has costed the companies equal amount of money. You engage a consultant, you had the transition stock on which you lost some money when you migrated to GST, you have to retrain the people, you have to invest in IT infrastructure. Now, the whole thing is there is a cost of transition to GST to the companies. And I mentioned that if I were the finance minister, I will say that the whole expense can be, I will give you some kind of a support for that. The GST transition expenses, if it is certified, I should be allowed to take a set off is the kind of measure, because not even this, you also lost some sales during the transition. But the thing is that all in the game, that it is a good legislation. We should move to this. Industry has cooperated, and these pain points from institutions like CII is working with the MSMEs and the small industries where GST clinics are conducted, how we can lessen their pain. This is where I am as far as this subject is concerned.
Absolutely. Let me now ask you about another aspect, and this is, for investors who are searching for answers as to how GST has impacted companies like yours. So in your case, sales grew by, from what we have here, around 7% in FY18 versus double-digit growth in earlier years. Can any of that be ascribed to the impact of GST, or were other factors impacting this sales performance?
I'm not sure which figure you are referring to. Our revenue growth was double digit. It was down during the first half of the year, but the second half it picked up. So take for example the room air conditioners business, that we grew more than 15%. It is 17.5% was our growth. So we were not affected in terms of sales in the products business. In case of projects business or the service business, a lot of time was taken because it is complex. You need to get the individual amendments and close, re-enter in the system and start billing, and therefore there was the execution delay, therefore some working capital. But on the whole, we are not. We suffered a little, I would say. It was not a very major thing. We would also claim that we handled it very well. Our customers cooperated. And so therefore I do not have any pain points from that perspective at all.
Okay, so therefore just one quick clarification before I move on, since you corrected the number that I just mentioned. I just want to ask you therefore, is the entire transition and the acclimatization that you had needed for GST, is that over in year one, or is there a spillover that you anticipate into year two also?
some spillover now with the e-way bill and the AS 115 asking for the acknowledgement, and therefore in that context there will be some kind of spillover, minor. I don't think there is anything major we need to worry about at all. And the next step will be, if the GST rates are rationalized, at that point of a time, what will be the transition rules? Because any transition rule is going to be a painful process. What will happen to the stocks which were sold to the dealers at the old GST rate, and therefore in the new GST rate, how it will be?
Absolutely, Mr. Thiagarajan, and there is a long way to go, like you said, also for the goods and services tax in becoming a good and simple tax, which is what the objective was, and for players like yourselves, as well as for the broader economy and participants, the hope that the second year of the goods and services tax will be one of more smoother taxation, as well as some of the irritants being done away with fully. That's the hope we have at this stage, Mr. Thiagarajan. I'm going to thank you for your time with us today. With that, it's a wrap on this special episode of GST at 1. We'll come back with more news and views on the other side. Don't go away. Back in just a bit from now.